Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. It is the 8th of June. By the way, you guys, 8th of June. Do you know? I want to put this up on the screen for folks. Glad that all of you are with us. Please hit that subscribe and like button below. Give us the thumbs up. I just want to note, June 8th is not when Spencer W. Kimball received the 1978 revelation, but it's when they broadcast it via document to the entire world via bishops and stake presidents. So when the church sent out its flyer from the 1978 revelation, giving people of color, all people essentially, access to priesthood and temple saving ordinances, June 8th was the date on the document. And I thought that was a little ironic as we get into some stories tonight.
It seems like only yesterday.
Yeah.
So it wasn't announced. It wasn't announced on June 8th over the pulpit. That was a stake. So for me, it was a stake meeting later in the month, and I can't remember the date of that exactly. I was only 12, but
I'm going to get baptized later that month.
And you're going to be baptized later that month. Wow.
Yeah, but it did happen. And that leads right into our first story. So let's just tell everybody the stories we're going to cover. By the way, good evening to both of you. Good evening to all of you out there. Tonight, Radio Free Mormon is going to cover the story of LDS church historian, who you know personally, RFM. LDS church historian makes racist comments. Rebecca then will tell us a story where LDS didn't make the government's Christian list, or did it? William Clayton's journals surface. That'll be me. Then we're back to, I think this is Rebecca, right? Church squatter just won't stop in New York. Then we've got a California bishop accused of CSA. Man, that's a weekly thing. Someone predicted that at the beginning of the year, us covering CSA every week. And I think that's Radio Free Mormon. And then we've got LDS Church now owns the Joseph Smith daguerreotype. Fairview launches media campaign. That's Rebecca. Mormon Church closing all bishop storehouses. I'll take that story. And we'll end with a story from Rebecca about new meeting house architecture reflects a change in focus. Can't wait to hear that one. RFM, take us through this first story, which,
Yes, this first story. This first story involves my first mission companion in Japan. It's Kyle McKay. He took one path and I took the path less taken. And he ended up being a church historian and a General Authority 70. And I ended up being Radio Free Mormon. And now, unfortunately, well, what happens is that there's somebody who monitors this and saw that there was some unusual statements that Kyle had made, and problematic statements. And they let several people know, I think, including Rebecca and probably me too, though I haven't seen it yet. But what I do know is that when I got out of the movie theater yesterday afternoon from seeing Pressure, highly recommended, by the way, that I had this text from you, which is maybe an hour old at that point. And I listened to it because it had the video clip, and I listened to it and I went, oh, this is, okay, well, we'll have to talk about this. And we did. And we ended up being able to get two other individuals, Summer Rain and a friend of mine who goes by the name Black Priesthood, to come on the show and give us their perspectives on what it was that Kyle had said. This was yesterday that he said it, so it's really, really recent. It was in Oklahoma City at a state conference they were having here. This was the general session of that state conference. And so let's just go ahead and play this. I'm going to play this, and we're going to go and do a brief history of similar incidents in recent memory on video. And then we're going to come back and replay this again, because I think it's important to be able to hear it twice. There's Kyle.
Well, brothers and sisters, it has been just a joy to spend this weekend with you, and especially the last hour plus. I've been so moved by what has been said and by what the Lord has been telling me. I hope that His Spirit may continue and that I won't get in the way of whatever God is trying to teach you. I've had a couple of experiences that have been less than spiritual. One coming out of the fact that maybe you can see it, but when you're on this stage, there's two just great big lights. And in this, I call this the Revenge of the Grasshoppers, because when I was a child, you know what you do with a grasshopper and a magnifying glass. And so for all of those that I sent to the other side, now I'm got the same kind of light here on me, and I'm wearing glasses, and I've burned holes in my retina here. So I'm grateful for this light. I'm especially grateful that we could sing This Little Light of Mine. That's a song where white people try to sing like black people, and it's our hymn. But I want you to know that we sang it in our ward. I happen to be visiting our ward because I don't get to go to my home ward, and we sang it for intermediate or something hymn. And I'm sitting next to our second counselor there on the stand, and he's singing This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And I went, hey, dude, I wanted to turn to him and say, you know you're white. And he was saying, no, I'm an African slave is what I am. And he's singing Swanee River. And anyway, I'm so glad it's in our hymn book. It does make you move just a little bit. And then there's another hymn in there that makes you move even more. I'm going to live so God can use me. I like that one. I'm grateful that we can rejoice in our music. I'm thankful for everything that's been said. And I want you to know that Elder Shaheen, working with him and being assigned.
Thank you, Bill. That doesn't get better for me. That was the worst time. This is probably the 10th time I've seen it, and I think that was the worst.
Yep.
What are your thoughts, Bill? I know that you couldn't make it to the show last night. What are your thoughts about this? And then I want to hear from Rebecca, if that's okay.
So I did get a chance today to watch you and Rebecca, Summer, and Black Priesthood talk about this. So I got to watch it, I think 2 times, maybe 3 times in your guys' analysis of it. And then I just watched it again. And I, like you, I think it gets worse every time I listen to it. The thing that stuck out to me is that, and when people listen to it again, please notice this. He makes this comment about singing like black people sing. And then he says, now it's our hymn. And I thought, wait a minute, what do you mean our hymn? Like there are black people and white people in the LDS church, but the way you're saying it is, even though it can be sung like a black person, it's our hymn, which seems to indicate that it's a white hymn for white people, or at least it's the church's hymn, which is white people. I don't know. I think this is really bad, Kyle. And I'm a little nervous about what this means for him, because I think this was just a lot of ignorance showing up in a moment where it was completely unnecessary.
His career may have peaked. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill. I think his comedic attempt was the juxtaposition of we are white people and we are singing black music that is now in our hymn book. I think that's the joke he's trying to make, but that doesn't make any sense at all on a worldwide global scale. And it comes off as incredibly ignorant and offensive. And I will mention that I think we all predicted this, but this morning, the stake conference, which was a live stream, anybody could go on and watch it. That's how we got the video. Somebody was just watching conference and was like, oh dear, and reached out. That video, which we, up until I think 10 o'clock last night is the last time that I had clicked on it just to watch some other parts of the full conference. That video has now been removed, right? So whether the stake removed it or whether the church asked the stake to remove it, I don't know how it got removed, but you can no longer just go in and see the video. Of course, people have downloaded it. People have copied the short, that kind of thing. But there is one thing I would like to say, because as RFM pointed out, we did do a pop-up podcast last night where we discussed this, and I made a mistake, and I'm going to say this publicly. I'm going to apologize to the second counselor in his home ward, Bishop Rick, that he mentions, because I had listened to it quickly a couple times, and I believe that Kyle was saying that that was something that actually happened. He had gone to his home ward, he had sat by the second counselor had been singing, and the second counselor had said those words, right? I'm an African slave, and singing Swanee. I thought that's what he was saying. This morning, and I thought, oh my gosh, rampant racism. This morning, I believe it's worse, because that was a fantasy conversation. Wouldn't you both agree with me that Kyle had in his head, just because someone was sitting next to him singing enthusiastically? It's a fun song. I mean, the other songs were like funeral dirges. It's a fun song to sing. I've sung it with a Black gospel choir that I was in for 4 years. And it's an amazing song. So I'm guessing his second counselor was singing enthusiastically. And Kyle made up this story. Kyle put those words in that man's mouth. I don't believe that man said anything. I think it was all Kyle. So I apologize to the second counselor. You did not do anything wrong, except for you sang enthusiastically. That's my take on it anyway. What do you guys think?
Well, this was pointed out by some people in the live chat, which I saw after I went home after the show last night to review. And I thought that was very, very astute. So here's the basic thing, okay, is that what Kyle says, and if we can play this again here in a second, Bill, we can skip the grasshoppers if you're able to do that. I botched that terribly last night. But I'm so sorry. Where was I?
We were talking about the second counselor and kind of creating, fabricating a narrative to be funny.
Yes, what Kyle says is he's over there singing, I'm gonna let it shine. And then Kyle says, and I said, dude, and then he says, and I wanted to say, see, he says, he didn't say, I told him. He says, I wanted to say that you're a white guy. You're a white guy, right? So that was never said, apparently. It's just something that he's saying was in his head. Now it becomes more confusing, because now he has the second counselor responding to this comment that Kyle didn't make to him, right? Because the response to, you're a white guy, that he says the second counselor says back is, no, I'm an African slave. If Kyle doesn't say the line and he says, I wanted to say it, not that he said it, then there's nothing really to respond to from the second counselor. And it starts to look more like a story that is supposed to be funny, and you're picking somebody else to be the foil in it. And it did occur to me later on when I was talking with Black Priesthood after the show, or at least texting. I think you were on that text thread too, as Summer was, that it may be that if you're going to go for a dodgy joke that could look kind of racist or in bad taste, put it in the mouth of a third party. Because he put all the bad stuff in the third party's mouth and was able then to act like he was sort of disapproving of it. But that way you get credit for the joke if it lands, but you avoid the responsibility for the racism that goes with it, because he's the one who said it. Do you have that, Bill? We've really been going over this with a fine-tooth comb, and I know everybody else has not necessarily. But listen to how he puts this and see if you agree with us.
And I'm wearing glasses, and I've burned holes in my retina here. So I'm grateful for this light. I'm especially grateful that we could sing This Little Light of Mine. That's a song where white people try to sing like black people. And it's our hymn, but I want you to know that we sang it in our ward. I happen to be visiting our ward because I don't get to go to my home ward. And we sang it for intermediate or something hymn. And I'm sitting next to our second counselor there on the stand, and he's singing This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And I went, dude, I wanted to turn to him and say, you're white. And he was saying, no, I'm an African slave is what I am. And I'm singing Swanee River. And anyway, I'm so glad it's in our hymn book. It does make you move just a little bit. And then there's another hymn in there that makes you move even more. I'm going to live so God can use me. I like that one. I'm grateful that we can rejoice in our music.
There you go, Bill. Thank you. He's almost like he is slurring his words a bit. I know some people have made some comments about whether he'd been drinking. I doubt that. In the Mormon church, you can't dip into the sacramental wine. You just got to come up with water is all. So I don't know, but it really did almost sound like he said, and he would say, okay?
Mm-hmm.
As if he's signaling that this is a story, that if I had said this to him, which I didn't, I wanted to, but I didn't, and then he would say this, and then I think it's just a story, and I don't know that the second counselor had anything to do with it, but now he's famous.
Yeah, and people can find out who he is. And they can, that's why I apologized to him, because I thought that this person was making racial remarks, and all he was doing is singing enthusiastically. So I wish he would come forward and sort of say, no, it didn't happen. I just like to sing. I wish that would happen.
I know, because Kyle gets up there and he says, and it's in my home ward.
That's what I mean. You can find out who this person is.
And it has to be recent enough to where that song is in the songbook, right?
February 2025.
Okay. So who's been second counselor in that ward?
As I said, it's very easy to find out who that person is, but we're not going to go there now. We're just going to hope that person knows that we all know you did not say anything inappropriate.
I just don't know why Kyle wasn't even thinking about that when he was talking.
I know.
The only thing the second counselor can be guilty of it all is singing in such a way that Kyle perceived it as the way a Black person would sing the song, which again, it's my 5th time watching it now, and it's worse than the 4th time I watched it. He does like 4 things that I'm like, ouch, ooh. Like, he couldn't get out of his own way. Which again, we all make mistakes, but to make 4 of them in a 15-second span seems to indicate either racism, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. The other thing is just some severe blind spots and not really knowing how to relate to or connect with people who are different than him.
Okay. Well, let's go forward, because by going forward, I mean, let's go backward. Let's go backward 6 years to 2020. Remember those halcyon days of 2020, right before the storm, before COVID struck? Well, in that time period, what happens is the church comes out with, I believe what it is, their first Come Follow Me Book of Mormon manual. And lo and behold, what should be in it but an old quote from Joseph Fielding Smith talking about the dark skin in the Book of Mormon as being the sign of the curse. And that dark skin is no longer to be considered a sign of the curse. It used to be, but not anymore. Okay. So anyway, this ended up in the manual. It got a lot of play. A lot of people noticed it and were pretty surprised. And Elder Stevenson is scheduled to speak. And I think he was probably scheduled to speak before, but he was scheduled to speak at the local meeting of the NAACP. And that's when he went before them to apologize for this. And we have the video of that, his apology. Here we are.
Now, prior to my prepared remarks, I'd like to address a matter with you. Some of you may be aware from a news article published over the weekend, one of our recent church manuals includes a paragraph with some outdated commentary about race. It was mistakenly included in the printed version of the manual, which had been prepared for print nearly 2 years ago. When it was brought to the attention of church leaders late last year, they directed that it be immediately removed in our annual online manual, which is used by the great majority of our members. We have also directed that any future printed manuals that will reflect this change. We're asking our members to disregard the paragraph in the printed manual. Now, I'm deeply saddened and hurt by this error and for any pain it may have caused our members and for others. I'd just like to reiterate our position as a church is clear. We do condemn all racism, past and present, in any form, and we disavow any theory advanced that black or dark skin is a sign of a curse. We are brothers and sisters, and I consider you friends.
Oh my goodness. Well, They condemn all racism, past and present. It's just so pesky when that past racism creeps into the present, isn't it? What do you remember about this incident, and what similarities, if any, do you see between that and what's going on yesterday with the church historian?
Well, I'll just say this. In the video clip we just watched, he's notifying the audience of the sentence, I think it's in the last paragraph of the gospel topic essay, that we disavow the theories of the past. But when you recognize that Elder Oaks and the church generally still hold the official position that the ban itself is still of God, then you recognize that he's actually conveying only a partial truth to the audience, and that if they knew the full truth, they'd be even more pissed that he stood up and said he was sorry for the disavowed theories, because the ban still has God being racist and prohibiting people of color of going to the temple and having the priesthood. It's just that the Mormon leaders gave reasons to it instead of just keeping quiet. It's still a racist priesthood ban, still from God.
It's interesting because it said that people will eventually say the truth, even if they're, in an unguarded moment, perhaps, if you're there and can understand what it means. Doesn't always work, I'm sure. But it seems like institutionally, that's what happened 6 years ago, is the church accidentally said what it is that it really, really thinks. What do you think about that story, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think there's an awful lot of truth that is hiding under there to be revealed. And I had a thought that somebody crystallized perfectly in the chat where they said, Elder Stevenson said, sort of outdated. They didn't say incorrect truth or whatever. It just said this was, dated kind of. This was not currently what we think, which is exactly what you guys have been saying. So, but they didn't necessarily say a completely wrong thing that we were all taught our entire lives, and all your leadership today lived all their life enforcing pretty much into their 60s, and it's actually God's fault. You're right. They never said that. So I think Streisand effect again, people in that room, if they weren't aware of that, or people who read those articles at that time, if they weren't aware, they were like, wait, what do you mean black skin? What? I think it educated a lot of people, as it always does.
Yeah, good point. Thank you so much for that. I wish we were done with these, but actually we have to now go from 2020 to a little bit more recent. I think it was around 2023. You can correct me on that date, but it has to do with a fellow named Brad Wilcox. Don't know if you've heard of him. Have you heard of him, Bill?
Yeah, I've had some interactions with Brad. Yep.
Well, this is the 30-second clip of something he said at Alpine in front of a big youth fireside kind of meeting, and he was really on a roll. He was feeling his oats, and he said something that, I don't know. It's starting to sound like a pattern.
How come the blacks didn't get the priesthood until 1978? What's up with that, Brother Wilcox? What, Brigham Young was a jerk? Members of the church were prejudiced? Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe instead of saying, why did the blacks have to wait until 1978? Maybe what we should be asking is, why did the whites and other races have to wait until 1829?
I think that deserves a pregnant pause.
I thought he would never come back from that. I went to that stake center because it was close to my neighborhood, and I did some footage, I did some shorts, and I said, he's never coming back from this. I'm standing outside of the building where it's over. Then he was like promoted into the young men's presidency, and he's, leading tours in big tour buses to Nauvoo. He's fine. But I really thought, how do you recover from that? Apparently you do. Apparently it's not that big of a deal.
Bill?
This seemed like a version of people saying Black Lives Matter, and then the white people come along and go, no, all lives matter. Because that's what Brad Wilcox is saying. The question is, why did we do that to people of color? And Brad's question is, well, why did God do that to white people? And only a few years earlier in a millennial after millennial church. I don't know. It's such a crazy thing to listen to him do that.
God did it to white people for almost as long as he did it to black people.
Almost.
That's,
Yeah,
I
so what are
think,
you
the thrust of
complaining
his
about?
argument, such as it is.
No, so he's saying, so what are you complaining about? Why is that
I'm
an
not sure-
issue for you? Yeah,
And I'm not sure what the point
get
is.
over it.
I don't know. God hates all races, just some more than others. I think that's the point. That's where that argument leads. Okay, so the last one, the last slide was the same one that we've already listened to twice, so we don't have to listen to it again. But oh yeah, we do have a couple more slides in the regular slideshow. Thank you, Bill. Which is when you go to the YouTube channel for the Oklahoma City Stake, they have their own YouTube channel. Yeah, that's how we were able to see this, was on YouTube, for crying out loud. This is where you go to when you follow a link that used to go to that video. It's not there anymore. It got taken down. There's a bunch of other videos on the same channel. They're still there. This is the only one to be taken down. Some people might look at that and think that means something, like maybe they realized this wasn't a good idea. What do you think about the fact it was taken down, Rebecca?
I assumed it would be taken down, and I assumed we'd be talking about this. I thought this is the next news story for tomorrow, that it's going to be taken down. The only thing I don't know is why or who authorized it, right? Did the stake just see what was happening and take it down? Did the church proper say, you guys got to take that down? Did Kyle request that the stake take it down? I don't know how it was taken down, but you can't take anything down in 2026. It will live on forever. And I agree with both of you. I've now seen it maybe 18 times. It is worse. It just hits you worse every single time. Yeah.
This idea that the church is hiding something, which we would have to say as two apostles who have covered the world and know the history of the church and know the integrity of the first presidency in the Quorum of the 12 from the beginning of time. There has been no attempt on the part in any way of the church leaders trying to hide anything from anybody.
And yet it's gone. When you erase something that some people claim is racist, it seems like you're giving credibility to the fact that you agree that it's racist. So best thing the church could do in these moments is not be seen as deleting history, is to leave it up and offer an apology. Now, since it's your doctrine that you don't give apologies, you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. But I would suggest in these moments, maybe it's better to just leave things up and offer apologies.
Because by some miraculous nature of technology, we were able to play it anyway, even though they took it down.
Yeah, the internet has a way of maintaining a record of things that you don't wish you had said.
Okay,
Well,
this last one, I know there's people talking about it over at Ex-Mormon Reddit. I thought this was the comment that won the internet about this because it made me laugh. Master Mahan Jr. says, what does it say, Rebecca?
says this little gaff of mine, I'm gonna go online.
No,
right?
it's going to
a
go
whole song.
online.
Do,
This
do,
little
do,
gap of mine, it's going to go online.
I love it. Let's write the whole song. I love it. I will say, since you bring up social media, though, I've been kind of tracking some faithful comments on some people that have posted it. And a lot of people tend to say that we have made a mountain out of a molehill on this. He was obviously joking. It doesn't mean anything. And we are the ones that are stirring the pot, causing the problems, drawing attention.
I know
was
he was
just telling
joking.
a simple, innocent joke.
I know he was joking.
Exactly. We all do, but that's not the issue. But
Right.
anyway, that's kind of the sentiment out there. We're the problem makers.
Well, yeah, I've tried, I saw people making those comments in different places.
Yeah.
And I didn't text you or anything, but I did think it, and I'll say it now for the record, all right? Last night with you, me, Black Priesthood, Summer, we looked at this a couple times. We had a discussion, and I think that was a level-headed, mature discussion of what he said and what people thought about it. And there wasn't any name calling or shrieking or condemnation. Actually, quite the opposite. I thought there was a lot of understanding and grace shown toward Kyle by our guests on the show. So, I don't see the reality of what we did as matching that description.
I will say this, though. Kyle, again, exposing racist ideas in the form of a joke doesn't make it not racist. In fact, it might make it worse. It would have been better if that was, in a sense, a real story and it was the second counselor's fault. But I also want to note, he tells the story in such a way that I think he's willing to allow the second counselor to look racist and to throw him under the bus when Kyle made up the entire story that's racist about the second counselor. It's such a strange thing.
As a former second counselor and a bishopric, I can tell you that's what second counselors are for.
Yeah, take the fall.
All right. So that is that story. Thank you very much. And back to you, Rebecca.
I think it's Bill. That's in
Back
charge.
to you, Bill.
Is me.
I'm
just
really
throwing it around the
bossy.
horn.
It feels like I'm always in charge because I'm so bossy. But yes, I let
think
Bill
it's
be in
ever
charge
so
this week.
All right. Here we go.
They let me 1 out of every 3 weeks, folks. They let me be in charge, and this is my week. So, folks, I just want to remind all of you, the post-Mormon celebration cruise is fast approaching. And we'll be taking off on day 1, September 13th. That's the day before my birthday. Our first full day at sea.
Bring gifts.
My birthday. So please, yes, bring gifts for RFM and ensure that he gets something nice. But we'll be going to Cabo San Lucas, Mazatlan, Puerto Vallarta. I don't know if I pronounced those right, but they're fun places in Mexico. We've got excursions planned, lots of time by the pool and the hot tubs. There will be karaoke. There will be stand-up comedy, tons of activities and events. I added Dr. John Lundwall there down below, and he's the newest addition to those who are coming. Wow. Again, Radio Free Mormon, Rebecca Biblioteca, Landon Brophy, Charlie Harrell, Jana Spanger, Ganesh Cherian, Dr. Julie Hanks, Dr. Randall Bell, Dr. John Lundwall, myself, and Sam Young. So you see the link down there at the bottom if you want to register for this. We hope to see each and every one of you that wants to go on this cruise. And there's already somewhere in the range of about 220 people going, somewhere in the range of 110 to 115 cabins reserved. And we're excited to see each and every one of you and to spend time with you and to have a lot of fun on this post-Mormon celebration cruise. So with that, let's go to Rebecca for our next story.
Well done, Bill. It'll be Gilligan's Island meets the Poseidon Adventure.
Oh my God. 2 of my favorites from the 70s all together. I liked your little want. That sounded very realistic, Bill. I love it. That was great. So, this is a story that blew up over the weekend. I'm sure most of you guys have been following this. We thought, it's the weekend. What could happen? Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was a big weekend for news. Here's an article in the Tribune. Are Latter-day Saints Christian? Oh, always a big question we discuss here on the newscast. The U.S. Defense Department doesn't appear to think so. And I'll just kind of briefly go over what happened. And we have a big update as of the last couple hours. If you haven't heard this, we'll get to that. The Department of Defense recently reduced its list of recognized religious affiliation codes from more than 200 categories down to just 31. In the new system, many Christian denominations are grouped under a broad Christian umbrella with subcategories such as Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Orthodox, Pentecostal, and others. And I will add to that Jehovah's Witness and Seventh-day Adventists. And what it means, we'll show you the list in a minute. It says Christian dash Jehovah's Witness, Christian dash Seventh-day Adventists, right? And you go down that list.
Made the cut?
Yeah, this is what's so unusual. This is what's so strange. Exactly. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I will say listed in this list, has no hyphen, right? No hyphen at all. So I don't know what Strangites, nobody can keep track anymore, is not included in these Christian categories under this umbrella. It does not say Christian dash the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It simply says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Instead, it appears as its own separate faith designation alongside groups such as Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, and the Baha'i faith. So this, you can imagine, caused an incredible stir, especially when people noticed that other burned over district religions like Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses did make that cut and got the Christian umbrella designation. I actually Googled Christian umbrella and found out that you can buy that. Maybe for Christmas, I'll get that for you guys. That is an actual Christian umbrella. Who knows? So, all right. The article goes on. For many Latter-day Saints, the classification is likely to feel ironic because the church leaders have spent decades emphasizing the faith's Christian identity and retiring the term Mormon in favor of the church's full name and stressing its focus on Jesus Christ. And we talk about this almost weekly, don't we? Everything they're doing to desperately appear to be mainstream Christian, from the cross on Temple Square to embracing the cross, wearing the cross, Easter, Good Friday, Holy Week, Palm Sunday, singing the Christian hymns like This Little Light of Mine. They're trying really hard to appear mainstream Christian. And here the Defense Department says, no, not so much. You don't get that wonderful umbrella. Yet the Defense Department's new structure places the faith outside of the Christian grouping, highlighting the continuing disagreement over how Mormonism fits into the broader Christian world. Because, hate to break it to everybody, but there are many mainstream Christians who do not feel that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a Christian denomination. And now look, they've got some proof backed up by the Defense Department. The change has reignited the long-running debate over whether Latter-day Saints are viewed as Christians by other religious institutions. Latter-day Saints affirm belief in Jesus Christ as Savior, place his name in the center of the church's identity, while many evangelical and traditional Christian groups have historically argued that LDS teachings about God, Jesus, Scripture, continuing revelation places the faith outside the boundaries of historic Christianity. And we talk about this a lot on the newscast. By placing the church in a separate category rather than under the new Christian umbrella, the Pentagon's classification appears to reflect that distinction. Why did this happen? Right? Everyone's saying, how did this happen? What does it mean? The defense official said that the reduction was intended to simplify record keeping and help military chaplains understand the religious makeup of their units. Kind of consolidation is what it sounds like, and more easily not make judgments about the validity of any faith. Heaven forbid the government should do that. Service members can still identify as Latter-day Saints, and the church does remain one of the 31 recognized religions of affiliations on the revised list. What did either of you think about this when you first heard it over the weekend?
I can tell you what I think now.
Yeah. Okay. Now or over the weekend?
Okay. What I think now is this. Okay. As a general principle, if you have a choice between malicious intent and simple incompetence, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be simple incompetence. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on here, but it's probably, I mean, this is your government at work. The tax dollars at work, okay? They probably just screwed it up. I doubt there was any ill intent. And although I can't vouch for this comment that was made or who made it, they represented themselves as being a veteran and saying that this is not a big deal. It's just, you know, how they're going to organize things in order to spread their resources. I don't know how that works. I don't know if that's correct. If this were a Christian, and by that I'm going to say a sort of fundamentalist evangelical, really dyed-in-the-wool Christian who's in charge of making this up, because obviously people make this up. And some of them might be Christian, and they might think, okay, well, I really hate those Mormons. They're not Christian, so I'm not going to include them on the list. It's just I can't imagine that would happen and not have the J-dubs there too.
And that's what's so unusual. Seventh-day Adventists and JWs are there. I almost feel like it could have been something with the database, like it can only have 200 characters, right? And because of the freaking long name of the church, you can't put Christian in front of it. It could be something that simple. What do you think, Bill?
Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, if you put Christian there and started it way over,
somebody counted
like
up.
Seventh-day Adventists,
Somebody
I
do that
think
math
you're
for
onto
it.
something.
What do you think, Bill?
I'll just say, as a church that requires everybody to say the full name of the church, and as you point out, it's the longest one on the list, you can easily see that. You've got Jesus Christ in the name.
Yep. At
the end of the day, again, I know that the evangelicals and other Christian denominations go, well, Mormons aren't real Christians. Every one of those groups debates in some way something about the original Christian theology or what role Jesus Christ play. You've got him in the name. Who cares? But it didn't die here, though, did it, Rebecca?
No, the story goes on. And I will say,
Rebecca,
yes.
I want to hear the rest of the story. But now that you've got me looking at it, they already give 2 lines on this little brief card that's supposed to synopsize the information to the Mormon church. Every single other church on there gets 1 line and only takes up 1 line.
Yeah.
It's the Mormons who have to take up 2 lines, and then it's threatening to go to 3, and now they're going to bitch about it.
That's what I say. If they had stuck with Mormon, they could have been Christian Mormon. I guarantee it would be under there like that. So, yeah. And again, I look at Faithful social media, and there was a lot of persecution complex. There were some that said, oh, it could be something we don't understand. But there were a lot of, yep, they've never liked us, that kind of a thing. So, of course, our state senators in Utah jumped right on that. Right? They weren't concerned about other denominations that had been left off of the list, right? 170 of them. So maybe some of their people here in Utah in those denominations, but attack the LDS church or look like something's wonky with that, they're going to jump in right away, guns blazing. Absolutely. Who do they work for? I guess I'll just maybe mention that on the side. So this article in the Deseret News, Senators Lee and Curtis question the new Pentagon designation for Latter-day Saints. Again, this is all over the weekend happening, right? They went to work on not a weekday, and they went in, and I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but Utah Senator Mike Lee and John Curtis criticized the Pentagon's new religious affiliation system after it categorized the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints separately from groups labeled Christian. They both argued Latter-day Saints are Christian. They are, because we say they are, and they questioned why the church excluded them. They made some tweets. You guys can pause on this. Here's the list. How come Latter-day Saints, they really made an issue publicly, and I am guessing behind the scenes, they also made an issue. And I'll tell you why in a minute. I do want to point out my co-host Landon, retired military, brought this up. There's a special designation for people who pass away in the military and want to have a marker in Arlington. And in 1980, the church said, this is what we want. We want a Moroni. So they're already kind of separating themselves within the military. We want this special designation. Other religions do this too. Look at this. Pretty amazing. All these different ones you can have on your headstone. But they certainly said, we don't want a Christian cross, right? We want our own separate Moroni. We want to show that we're Latter-day Saints. Another thing that sets them apart, they do have chaplains in the military that are Latter-day Saints, but those chaplains cannot conduct services like for other groups. Or the LDS can't have a service. Sorry, I said it backwards. The LDS members there can't have a service conducted by other Christian chaplains. They have to have somebody come in, a branch president. It has to be a priesthood holder. So there are things in the military that necessarily set apart the Latter-day Saints from other grouped together Christians. A Baptist chaplain could go and run a service for a Lutheran, a Methodist, but the LDS members there have to have somebody separate to come in. So, maybe they're just sort of seen as wanting to be peculiar and different. That's kind of how I looked at it. Maybe, no offense was meant. It was something like that. Whatever happened behind the scenes just a few hours ago, breaking news, the problem is solved. After criticism from Utah lawmakers and others, the Pentagon revised its religious affiliation classification systems to identify the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as part of the Christian tradition. In other words, nobody is Christian now. Nobody gets that little designation. This just goes into how the senators kind of said things publicly. And again, I don't know what happened behind the scenes. It could have been something, but here's the new list. Nobody has Christian in front of their names. Nobody. Everybody's just sort of a Christian denomination. And then it says Christian non-denominational. You can freeze on that and look at it, but it's solved. No harm, no foul. We are Christian yet again. And we have our designation. So any final thoughts on this story? I figured that they might fix it at the last minute, and they did. So 2 breaking things. A video's pulled, and Mormons are Christian again. It's a big day.
It does settle the question about whether Mormons are Christian. For a brief time, they were not, but now apparently they are. And we know it because the government says so.
That's it.
Fixed. There it is.
That's all.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Rebecca, for that. I just want to know, I've got to take this the next one first and just read this one. I've got the next story here. One of the more interesting stories this week comes from Jeremy Hoop, one of the polygamy deniers, and he's got the YouTube channel Still Mormon. Hoop claims that he has obtained all 3 unabridged volumes of the William Clayton journals, records that have long been discussed by historians but have never been fully released by the church. According to Hoop, by the way, the document on the right, William Clayton wrote lots of things, and there are journals or diaries of his that are not being withheld by the church, and you can read some of the writings of Clayton in other places, but this particular 3 volumes of William Clayton's journals have been withheld by the church, even though they've never hidden anything. those the church has promised over and over to release, but has not of yet. But according to Hoop, he has them. These journals completely change the story, he says. He argues that they demonstrate that Joseph Smith did not practice or initiate polygamy, and that historians who have cited Clayton's writings as evidence for Joseph's plural marriages have been misleading the public. I'm going to play the video here of Jeremy Hoop.
How on earth does he get a hold of these? This is like the Holy Grail.
Yeah. Can I ask one question about that? Is he saying that he has the pre-copies of what is going to be released? Because we've been talking about this, the journals are going to be released. Or is he saying he has the copies of the unredacted, never touched, never seen the light of day journals, what we're all going to get, I'm assuming heavily redacted. He is saying, from nodding your head, Bill, that he has the unredacted journals. He has straight from the pen of William Clayton.
He claims that somebody on the inside of the church gave him the typescript of these 3 volumes and said, you can hang on to these, but do not say you have them until I die. And then apparently that person died. And now Jeremy has the ability to come forward with these. But I want you to watch this video. I think there's a lot here to make note of. So I'll put this up on the screen, and we'll listen to him say it straight from the horse's mouth.
I have the William Clayton journals, all 3 volumes. That's right. The William Clayton journals, A, B, and C. These are the same journals that have never been released to the public. And every single person interested in this topic has been waiting to see these. I've had them for a while, and I couldn't talk about it. Well, until somebody very important passed away, and I gave my word I wouldn't talk about it until then. But that gave me the time to study them and understand them in a way that no one has ever talked about before. And now I can say that I can prove to you that the historians who use these to prove that Joseph Smith was a polygamist, most, if not all of them, have no idea what they're talking about. If they had read them, the full journals, and understood them, there is no way that they would make the claims that they make in the way that they.
Curious.
No, I will say it is curious because I do know of another person, I'll be very vague here, who had access to that through various means. And this was a very learned historian type person in the church. They read them and had the exact opposite reaction.
Well, that part doesn't surprise
their
me.
testimony to the core, to the point that they are now somebody who's, walking that line. So there's a disparity here because this person said, I've seen them, I've read them, I've had access. And I think the word monster came out.
Well,
so I don't know what
in his practice of plural marriage, you mean?
Just the person in general. Yeah.
That's what you mean, right? About Joseph Smith.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that's very fascinating that he would make that claim. I guess we will never get to see them, right? Because as you're saying, Bill, these are not the journals that are going to be released.
What is going on, Bill?
Yeah, so these are the journals that are eventually at some point going to be released. At least the LDS Church says as much. We'll get to that in a second. It's interesting, right? Because on one hand, he says he's had them for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever gave them to him must have been feeble and said, I'm going to die soon. When I die, you can release them. In the meantime, he's been working with these, studying them. But not only studying them, he's written a book, of course. He's written a book called The Clayton Conundrum. So let me just note, there's one problem here. Nobody else is allowed to examine the documents.
And the documents themselves are just transcripts.
Yes. Hoop reads a few excerpts in his video to convince viewers that he has these 3 volumes. But he's not released them of yet. He says that he promised the person who provided them that he would keep them private until that individual passed away. And he says now he's safe to begin showing them. he's also announced his forthcoming book, The Clayton Conundrum, which raises for me the obvious questions about whether these documents are being preserved for historical purposes or being used to create a commercial opportunity. And Jeremy, I think this looks a lot like a commercial opportunity. So to be clear, I'm willing to give Jeremy the benefit of the doubt. If he truly possesses the previously unavailable William Clayton material, that would be a significant development. But extraordinary claims require extraordinary transparency. Who provided the journals? How did they obtain them? Are these complete copies? Are they redacted? Are pages missing? Because that wouldn't be the first time in church history where something like that's happened. Now, if these journals genuinely overturn decades of historical scholarship, why are they being withheld from historians and the public? Was Hoop okay with the LDS Church being the gatekeeper of Clayton's journals? I'm guessing no. Yet here he is, a gatekeeper as well, selling his access at least to some extent. Now, we've seen this movie before. Mormon history has a long record of individuals claiming access to secret documents that later turn out to be incomplete, misrepresented, or outright fraudulent. Names like Mark Hoffman or John Hyacek remind us of why caution is necessary whenever someone claims possession of historical sources that nobody else can verify. But there's also another issue. Jeremy Hoop is already publicly committed to the position that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy. He and other polygamy deniers or monogamy affirmers, whichever one you prefer, have repeatedly dismissed evidence that most historians consider credible, including sources such as the Martha Brotherton account or the Melissa Lott Bible, for example. Their broader argument is that Brigham Young invented or expanded polygamy and then retroactively attached it to Joseph Smith. Now, that history makes independent access to these journals even more important. If the Clayton records contain evidence supporting Joseph Smith's plural marriages, will that evidence receive a fair reading by Jeremy Hoop and others whose faith depends on Smith not being a polygamist?
Not a chance.
Any more than I trust the LDS Church as a fair arbiter of history when their authority rests on a certain interpretation of history? Or will it simply be explained away like so many other sources that polygamy deniers have tackled have been dismissed? At the end of the day, this is simple. If these journals are authentic and historically significant, which they are, they belong in the hands of scholars. They belong in the hands of the public, not locked behind promises, speculation, a future book release. And until the documents themselves can be examined, viewers should treat claims by Hoop and others about what they supposedly prove with caution, regardless of which side of the Joseph Smith polygamy debate is making them. And I'll just note, I just don't trust Jeremy Hoop to read the Clayton diaries. And even if there's tons of evidence in there about Joseph Smith's polygamy, I can't see a world we live in where he would ever come forward and acknowledge that there are parts of the journals that talk about polygamy in a way that he sees credible. Either it's not there, it's misinterpreted as being there when it isn't, or it's just a later insertion by William Clayton, Brigham Young, and others. So I've got to see them myself, Jeremy. I'm not buying your book. I want to read the journals myself. Don't you be a gatekeeper too. Your guys' thoughts.
You know, the very fact, first off, Hoopa, the very fact that Hoopa would go about this in this way, make these claims, do the slow release, and the book it's very revealing, I think, about who he is and what he's about.
Yeah, and he says in the video, I'm going to give commentary on this one part at a time. And so he's keeping himself in the middle of it all so that we all have to watch his videos to see what his thoughts are on the sections that he puts up on the screen so that we can read them or we can buy his book to maybe get that information faster. By the way, I'll just tell you my 2 cents. I don't think that he got these from a person who said, don't share it until I die. I think however he got it, that's a made up story. I think what he did was he used that story to explain why he bought himself time to be able to explore them himself and to get his book ready for publication.
He is
That's
an
what
apt
I think.
pupil of Joseph Smith.
Yeah, that's what I think. Rebecca, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think he's pulling another Karen Muhlestein, right? Isn't that the scholar that said, I'm going to start from a position that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy? I mean, that's not what he said, but I start from a position that the church is correct, or whatever premise you want to start with that's correct. And then you backwards engineer the documents, the evidence, the history to fit your conclusion. And that's not a historian. I mean, you'll be right every time, but everybody else can usually poke holes through it. I did have this weird thought, though. I mean, I think you made a comment once, RFM, where you said, I bet the church is kicking itself that it came out and announced polygamy. If they would have known about this movement, they could have gotten behind that. And there's tons of people, feeding into he didn't do it. They picked the wrong thing too soon. Maybe they're trying to put something out where the church itself can say, after exploring the evidence, we now blame Brigham Young completely. So I don't know. I just say it's time to release them. It's absolutely absurd that information, which is so critical, such founding documents of, Joseph Smith, that information should have been released years ago. There's no reason to keep it, scotch tape it, back into the journal, keep it in the vault. Those things need to come out.
And whatever you think about Hooper and what he's doing over there, okay, and I have a dim view, but it's the church's fault. The church is the one who has not been producing the journals and not producing and saying we're going to and not producing. And it's been years and years. And it has opened the field for someone like Hooper of questionable ethics to come forward and do this kind of thing.
Yeah. And Rebecca, you said first, and RFM, you reiterated, like the church started this whole thing. They could have just put it out, be transparent. And I want to note that the church announced in 2017 that the William Clayton Nauvoo journals would be published. Again, other works of Clayton have been published. You can access things. If you didn't know better, you might think you're reading the journals that you're not allowed to read. But in fact, there are still documents being withheld by the church. Jeremy Hoop claims that he has those. I'll just say here again, 2017 is when the church first said they would be published. Then again in 2025, you see the article there on the left, Church News, church officials again announced that the project was moving forward in partnership with Yale University Press. By the way, that's another mistake. I have a reluctance in believing that Yale will allow this project to have their stamp on it if the church tries to control the fact that some of the material is damaging to the church and can't be published. So I think there's a reason why this got announced back in September of 25, and we are now June 8th of 2026, and it has been nothing but crickets. So I'll just say that. Church representatives described the journals as one of the most important historical records from Nauvoo and expressed eagerness for both scholars and members to finally read the long-awaited volume. Now, they said volume, I think singular in the article, yet nearly a decade after the original announcement, the complete journals still remain unavailable to the public, even in light of Hoop claiming he has them. That delay creates a vacuum, and vacuums get filled. Right now, the vacuum is being filled by Jeremy Hoop and other Joseph Smith polygamy deniers, because I can't wait till they jump on the bandwagon once he starts releasing things. If the church truly intends to publish these journals, then the most reasonable path is simple. Release them before Hoop and the polygamy deniers put their own interpretation on them. Let the historians, the members, the critics, the doubters, the believers, and everyone in between examine the records for themselves. The church has repeatedly emphasized increased transparency in recent years. This is an opportunity to demonstrate it, LDS Church. Otherwise, the narrative surrounding one of the most important Nauvoo era sources may end up being controlled not by open access to the evidence, but by competing claims about evidence that almost nobody can see. If church leaders believe the historical record ultimately supports the truth, then there is little to gain by continued delay and much to gain by allowing the public to read the journals and reach their own conclusions before Jeremy Hoop goes any further with this facade of sharing history.
By the way, putting a positive spin on what Jeremy Hoop is doing, I don't know him well, but if it were in fact his intent to try and force the hand of the church to produce the journals by doing this, I would give him credit for that. I don't think that's what it is, though, because of, the book and everything.
Yeah.
I don't think that the church knows. Maybe they're just starting to recognize how many people are polygamy deniers. I mean, I've told that story over and over of going to the movie Who Killed Joseph Smith and seeing 500-600 people filling a theater. That was years ago. I don't think they realize, or maybe they are just starting to, that in any ward, there's going to be a major group of people that believe this. And, sure, they can let the journals out to support their position. He was a polygamist, but other things in the journal, I'm sure, make him look horrible. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Harsh measures.
Yeah. Yes.
By the way, it points to, again, I've said it numerous times, I'll keep saying it, which is that believing members of the church don't want to see their founder as a child predator, as somebody who manipulated women into intimate relationships. There is a lot of pressure, motivation on a believer who starts to dive into the history to come up with some other workaround for Joseph Smith's polygamy. And I think the polygamy deniers, while being horrible historians, have done a fantastic job of convincing those who would like to be convinced that Joseph Smith is not a polygamist. And the church's best move right now is to try to get as far in front of this as possible by do the same thing that Joseph Fielding Smith did back in the late 60s and get ahead of Gerald and Sandra Tanner by releasing the William Clayton journals so that Hoops doesn't spend the next 6 months releasing it bit by bit with his own stamp of interpretation on it. Let people read it. I'll just note to finish off the story, this may be hard to see. I'll put us at the bottom and see if this works. This was the cutout of his YouTube video where he unveils that he has the William Clayton Nauvoo journals. I just put a comment in there today. Not sure if it's still there. Look at Hoop setting himself up as the gatekeeper, writing a book and delivering to people piece by piece the Clayton Journal as he sees fit, capitalizing on the polygamy denier community and making money off the book and the views all along the way. Something smells fishy here, I think. So there's that. Any final thoughts from you? Otherwise, I'll skip to the next story.
Apt pupil indeed.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, well, with that, let's go to another child sex abuse case in the LDS church, week after week, RFM.
Yeah, this one is from a couple weeks ago. We've put it off a couple times. It's a horrible one. And especially because apparently these allegations are against a Mormon bishop during the time he was serving as bishop. So often we see a person who was a bishop but isn't any longer, or maybe they were a kid when the allegations are made and then later they became a bishop. We've seen that too. I think we've seen every variation under the sun by this point. But this one is unusual. It's Oakland, California. SNAP decries the abuse of 4 male survivors by a former Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints bishop charged with multiple counts of child sexual assault. Michael Morris, 76, is charged with 18 felony counts of non-forcible sexual assault involving multiple children between 1991 and 2001, a decade, when he served as a bishop in Livermore and supervised a church-affiliated boys' youth group, which sounds like Boy Scouts. This story sounds too familiar. An untrained man is given a position of authority over a congregation and has the opportunity to groom and abuse minors, said Judy Larson, SNAP's board secretary, who is herself a former member of the Mormon Church. The cognitive dissonance, she continues, of finding out their bishop is a predator is more than many Mormons can believe. And so they end up not believing it, not going to police, not protecting the children. Larson explained that Mormon bishops routinely interview young people alone and behind closed doors, which can allow a predator to groom or abuse children. They may ask them sexually explicit questions in order to determine their worthiness, she said. This case involves deeply troubling allegations of abuse of trust and authority involving children, said Alameda County District Attorney Ursula Jones Dixon in a statement last week. Our office remains committed to pursuing justice for survivors of sexual abuse, regardless of how much time has passed, whenever the law permits prosecution, she said. And there's a few facts on Michael Delar Morris. This is at Floodlit, that great website that keeps track of these things. And by that, I mean Mormon sexual abuse allegations. Here, it talks about the 4 young men who are the alleged victims. He was arrested on May 15th of 2026 and charged with 18 felony counts related to child sexual abuse. And you can see down there in the middle of that list on the left, during alleged crime, he was a bishop. And the red box at the bottom, Morris was excommunicated, but apparently never criminally charged. Okay, this is back between 1991 and 2001. That's a while ago. Morris was excommunicated at the time, but apparently never criminally charged. He was later rebaptized. So that has all the earmarks of something that was handled in-house by the Mormon Church without getting the authorities involved. Then this information, that bail was set on May 21st. Let me see. He was scheduled for a court appearance on May 22nd. His bail was set to $920,000, so almost a cool mill. And that evening, he posted bail. So I'm guessing there's a very happy bail bonds person out there somewhere, because they just made a bundle, unless he was able to post the whole thing. But he is now out on bail, awaiting trial. And everything else on there, I think we have covered before. I know when I first heard that it was Livermore, I was thinking England for some reason. I probably crossed wires with Liverpool, but it's Livermore, California is where this is alleged to have happened. Any comments from you? I believe that's the end of that story. No, there is this update. Morris has been excommunicated from the Mormon Church twice. According to another source, Morris was called as Bishop of Sycamore Grove Ward until March 3rd, 1996, and released June 17th, 2001. That would be the normal 5-year term for a bishop. According to charging documents, Morris allegedly sexually abused victims in 91, 96, 97, 98, and 99. And you can see that overlaps the time he was serving as a bishop. News reports state that the alleged abuse occurred between 1991 and 2001. Anything you wanted to say about this, Rebecca, about those 2 excommunications?
Yeah, it seemed like he was excommunicated once, maybe close to the time where some of these things were happening, and then more victims came forward. I'm not exactly sure how that would work exactly. I know there was an article, I think I sent it to you, I don't know if you saw it, about it kind of in conjunction with his bail. They are trying to figure out, he lives in Utah, in southern Utah, and they're trying to figure out, should he have to move to California, not be allowed to be in Utah, but stay down there where he's going to be tried. So they're trying to figure out, and I'm sure you can tell me the legal terms for all this, what the conditions, of him being out on bail are. I mean, obviously he can't have contact with minors or grandchildren or, but what are some of the other stipulations, home arrest, does he have to be in California? So I guess we'll update everybody when we find out more, but I think they're still hammering that out.
If you can show me the order, I'd be happy to tell you. Now, quite frequently, those issues are addressed and hammered out at the time of the arraignment when bail is set at $920,000, I think it was in this case.
Right.
And then those conditions are taken into account at that point, that if you post bail, then here's the conditions. And usually it's a check mark and an address where you're going to stay. And if there's going to have to be EHM or electronic home monitoring, usually it's boilerplate. You got to stay in the state that you're charged with. However, that can be addressed, and a judge can make an exception for that.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're asking because he's in southern Utah. So, but as I understand it, and I've talked to some other people, most people don't know at this point, we're talking neighbors and people that this is even his scenario. They have no idea, and people are finding out and they're very surprised.
Yeah. Well, there you've got an abuser hiding in plain sight once again. We've got another person who is hiding in plain sight. Rebecca, tell us more on this story.
I see what you did there. Look at that segue. This is a story out of New York. It was something I think I skipped last week because we had so much other news. Mormon church says sneaky squatter found snoozing in the attic repeatedly broke into chapels, their lawsuit says. And, when you're a kid, I used to always kind of think, I wonder what would happen if I slept at the church. It was kind of cool. Not under that part, under the stage. Do you guys remember that part? That scary part where they keep the tables and chairs.
Yeah.
I still have nightmares about that area under the stage. But anyway, in this case, it says a sneaky squatter won't stop breaking into Mormon church buildings around New York and setting up illicit campsites. I have some funny pictures I'm going to show you where he has been captured in shocking photos, hiding in the nooks and crevices of the facility like a church mouse, a lawsuit claims. His name is Edwin Pabon. He has a history of trespassing on church property and entering the church locked and occupied buildings, storing his personal belongings in classrooms, using the kitchen, the bathroom facilities, sleeping in the church's buildings, according to the court filing. Here is a picture. And I have to guess, is he taking his own pictures? He must be like, here I am in the church. He's just a kid. He's only 28 years old. He joined the church in 2007. And, maybe he's homeless. I mean, when I read it, I was kind of laughing. These pictures get kind of funny. But then I thought, this is really sad. My young adult kids are this age. And if he really has nowhere else to go and his church family, his church home is the only place, maybe he really, really needs help, not a lawsuit. Here he is kind of up in the rafters. He must be taking his own pictures, I'm guessing. But they keep taking him out, charging him with whatever, trespass. And then he keeps going back in over and over, basically.
What's their lawsuit supposed to do?
That's what I'm not, just permanent restraining order. Here he is sleep. It's just funny to see somebody using the church building as your home. Like, I'm just going to sleep up here on this counter, or I'm going to take a shower in the baptismal font area. It's kind of funny, but then you think, okay, this kid probably has some mental issues and probably needs help. He really needs somebody to come and try to support him. Look at this.
I've always wanted a bathtub with more space in it, get my elbows out a little bit. That font, that'd be a great place to take a good bubble bath.
So it says the last month he was found on 2 consecutive days. The lawsuit claims sleeping in the chapel stage. The suit also describes similar behavior this is all happening in New York, multiple occasions. Now the church is asking a judge to issue a permanent restraining order banning him from all properties owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, kind of funny, kind of cute little rogue kid. But then again, that darker side where I'd be worried about him and hope that somehow he could get some care if he really has nowhere else to go. He joined the church. He's a member of the church. There should be some support and care for him there instead of just dragging him out every time. I mean, ask him if he needs help, maybe, if they haven't already.
Do you think maybe his mistake was to use the kitchen instead of as a warming kitchen, which the insurance covers?
That was the tipping point. That was it. Finally, oh my gosh.
I'm wondering how he keeps getting back in.
They don't know. That's what's so tricky. They have no idea how he's getting in, but they just find him there. And then in the comments and where this was posted, different places, other people said, oh yeah, there was a guy that lived in my church, or they discovered. So apparently it's not that uncommon to have somebody kind of sneaking in and staying there.
Well, there you go. There's that. Awesome. Well, thank you, Rebecca. There's another story here with the locket, the daguerreotype image of Joseph Smith. So the Salt Lake Tribune announced this week that the LDS Church has officially acquired the famous Smith-Larson locket containing the 1840s daguerreotype that some believe may be the only photograph. And I say photograph loosely. A daguerreotype isn't necessarily considered a photograph. It's a different sort of method to make it, but essentially it gives us a photographic image. That it's the only photograph ever taken of Joseph Smith. The image first became public in 2022 after descendants of Joseph Smith discovered the hidden photograph inside a family locket that had been passed down through generations. Since then, historians and descendants have debated, and the public at large has debated it as well. There's been tons of people with no expertise claiming to be experts who know that it is not Joseph Smith or know that it is. But this was passed down for generations. Since then, historians and descendants have debated whether the image truly depicts Joseph Smith, while the church has consistently stopped short publicly of making that claim. But what caught my attention isn't the photograph itself. That's old news. It's the ownership story. The church's announcement and subsequent coverage tells us the locket was donated to the church. Yet the Salt Lake Tribune never clearly identifies who made the donation. The Tribune publishes an article that seems to go out of the way to avoid telling the line of ownership. And so I'll just note here that that the newscast didn't stop there. I spoke to an inside source today. They verified for me. Now, believe this. This is the first time you two are hearing this. They verified that a wealthy person acted as a middleman and purchased the locket off of Dan Larson, who was the person who came forward with it. Remember when Locke Mackay, one of the Community of Christ apostles in the Community of Christ Church, was sort of giving the commentary when this locket came forward. So a person acted as a middleman, purchased the locket off of Dan Larson for an amount in the 7 figures.
That's millions, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And by the way, you go look at other things similar to this, and you'll see prices of $250,000, $500,000 paid no problem for church artifacts. So you say, how much would you pay for an image that's a photograph of the prophet Joseph Smith? So who actually transferred ownership to the church? I don't know. Now, that said, I want to end with this. That said, would you pay 7 figures for a photo that isn't your faith's founder? And I will only say this to end it. Behind the scenes, the church, and like Richard Turley, for instance, is another person. The church generally, Richard Turley specifically, believe that this is Joseph Smith, but publicly, the church's official stance is, how could we know for sure? Your guys' thoughts on the church now owning, again, they own pretty much all of America anyway, them owning the Joseph Smith locket.
It's making me smile because I know it's him. The first time I ever saw the picture back when it came out, and I've talked about this before, I looked at it and right away I said, oh, there you are. I knew it. I knew those eyes, the brow, the smirk. I just said, this is you. This only confirms to me the fact that they're going to pay 7 figures. If they were paying it to suppress it, which they probably will, they could have just sort of left it out there, whatever. People are arguing back and forth over it, but they have it now. And yeah, you would never pay that amount of money if it weren't what it purported to be. Now, Jasmine put out a short just a couple days ago about this, very excitedly, in very positive terms, saying she thinks, she kind of alluded to very positively, she thinks it could be him. I mean, everything about it was skewing toward that it is him. So we all know, we think maybe possibly Jasmine sort of soft launches things, I still find it hard to believe that they would ever put his picture in lesson manuals, because as you and I have talked about, Bill, when you see this, and not the Ken doll cartoon or the blurry water painting with his, blonde hair. When you see this, you're like, this is a man. And this is a man that can do things men do, not great men do. You know what I mean? And it becomes more of a reality. And you start thinking of little girls, young women, and you see this man. So it's problematic. I don't think we'll ever see it in church curriculum, but I think they know it's him. And I think the dollar amount proves it to me beyond a shadow of a doubt. Amen.
Well, now they own the copyright, so maybe they can control the usage of images, or they think they can.
Yeah.
That didn't surprise me at all, Bill. That's exactly what I was thinking would happen. And the reason why is because this is the way the church operates. And I will push back just gently, okay, on the fact the church did not buy this. The church has massively wealthy members who are happy to do their bidding, because I will do the things the Lord commands. And we want you to buy this and donate it to us. Okay. They go and buy it and donate it. In fact, I think that The same thing was going on at the time that Mark Hoffman blew himself up because
Christensen.
thank you. They were, the church leaders were meeting with a vastly wealthy member of the church. Canada is coming to my mind. He might have lived
No,
in
it's
Canada.
Mr. Max, if you're familiar with that store. His son, I can't remember, was it Mark? Was it Scott? I don't know. One of them was one of my son's mission presidents, but it was Christensen. And the church asked him, you purchased these. And because of all of that, he got in the crosshairs of Mark Hoffman.
Oh,
But
and
it
that
was
was
the
an
very
earlier,
same deal.
that's an
Very
earlier
same deal.
version of the exact same thing. This was just a little bit later when Mark Hoffman says, I've got the McClellan collection. Well, who the heck's going to buy it? Well,
Right.
we'll find some rich person to do it and donate it to us.
Why wouldn't the church just want to buy it directly, just to keep their name off of having paid money for it? Because if you get the middleman to do your bidding for you, you still, at the end of the day, are going to be seen by the general public as having purchased the thing yourself. Do you think it's maybe they don't want to spend the funds from the $350 billion they have? I can't come up with a reason.
I don't think people know.
I just think the church is, on one hand, they may want to keep arm's distance in some way. I don't know. In another way, the church is so tight, it squeaks when it walks.
Yeah, but look at the headline. It didn't say the church through somebody purchased this. It says it was donated. That sounds amazing. How charitable. Of course you want the church to have back a picture of its founder. It's never going to get out that there was a middleman, although, Bill found out, and you can probably guess everything's a donation. The land for this temple was donated. They don't say by a developer who's building a whole bunch of houses around it. Donation sounds wonderful. We're the kind of an organization that everyone wants to donate to. Don't you? I think it's all optics.
I'll just say this to close out the story. Like you, Rebecca, the first time you told me that, there you are. I had the same feeling prior to coming to that conversation with you. People have referenced that this Joseph Smith has an eerily similar appearance to a young Jeffrey Epstein, for instance. I'll just note, you can't tell whether someone's a child predator based on their appearance or body type or skin color. That's nonsense. But as you point out, all of the make-believe images of Joseph Smith that paint him as, just like you say, a Ken doll, this is a human being. This is behind those eyes and behind that grin is a grown man with proclivities and capable. That face is capable of doing the things that Joseph Smith did, whereas these pretty Ken doll images just create a fantasy appearance of Smith that allows all of us to sort of have a make-believe image of him. This is a real human being right here. So, okay, there's the end of that story. We're going to go into some rearranging of the chapels in Mormonism, Rebecca.
We are. This is kind of an interesting story. So interesting things always tend to land in my lap. I will say one last thing about the last story. I always talk about how showing my elderly mom a picture of, Middle Eastern Jesus and her throwing her apron over her head saying, that's not my Jesus. I did the same thing to rock the boat with this Joseph Smith picture. I took it over to assisted living years ago. I said, look, Mom, they've discovered a picture of Joseph Smith. I showed it to her. She looked at it. She said the very same thing. Well, that's not my Joseph. Exactly. That's not my Joseph, but that is Joseph. So, all right, on to church architecture. Here we go. This story is so fascinating. Okay. You may have noticed online, if you follow me, that I took an informal poll. And the question was, and I'm going to ask you guys too, in LDS buildings you have attended a sacrament service in, was the sacrament table to the side or front and center under the pulpit? And if you have seen a sacrament table front and center, was it a new or older building? In all of your years of attending many buildings, where has the sacrament table been for you guys? I was shocked at this poll. On the side. We got hundreds of answers. Yeah. What was that, RFM?
It's always on the side. I think in some buildings it's on the right. I think in some it's on the left, although I could be wrong about that, but it's always on the side.
Yeah, always on the side. Ours was on the right-hand side. Most of the buildings I'd been in, I remember being on the right-hand side. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to think back too, and that's what I remember. And I mean, I posted this a lot of places, and 99.9999999% of people said, "Oh yeah, it's not a thing. It's never in the center." Now, a few people brought up very old buildings, and I'm going to go into that in a minute. But everybody said, in their experience over the last how many years, the sacrament table is always on one side or the other.
I'm
So
sorry,
there
I'm
was a-
laughing because Bill's putting up all these comments in the live chat and they're all arguing with each other.
over where the sacrament table is.
Yes.
Is it left or right?
Always left, no, always left, no, always right.
Well, think about how Oak says you must, and he harps on this, take the sacrament with the right hand. It seems to me that maybe the sacrament table, although would it be facing or you facing the audience? I don't know. It's very confusing, but the answer is here, and I'm going to tell you about it. So it's interesting because before I received what I received that I'm about to show you guys, I was having a conversation with my co-host, Landon, about exactly that, a sacrament meeting and how it is portrayed, what it means, and what it really represents. And this was a really interesting article. It was in, gosh, I can't even remember where it was, but it's called The Church of Eternal Families, Marriage and Gender Roles, Covenant Path in Jesus Christ. And one thing they made note of here is sacrament meeting would be a worship service instead of a meeting if they truly were a Christian church, right? It's a meeting. It even says in the handbook, it's a meeting. Right now, sacrament meeting has the atmosphere of a business meeting. Somebody conducts the meeting, similar to how a business person or a chair would lead a business meeting. And then down at the very end, it says the sacrament table in LDS chapels is off to the side as opposed to other churches. And I don't know if you know this, but every other Christian church I've been in, the altar, the sacrament table, communion table is right up front. Other churches that have the altar or Eucharist table in the center of the chapel. And I had never thought about that before or what that indicates about a Mormon meeting. So I kind of dug in a little farther. Here's another article from the center to the periphery, the placement of sacrament altars in Mormon worship spaces. And this person does dig into some of the history of it. And they talk about the Kirtland Temple. We've all seen pictures of that. And it says on the bottom tier of both sets of the Kirtland pulpits are fold-out tables intended for administration of the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. Their placement there puts them in the center of focus for the congregation and places the sacrament clearly under the purview of the priesthood. So not off to the side in the early church, front and center, you are watching the priesthood in action, and they are preparing the sacrament. So symbolically, what does that represent? It's a little different than it is now. They say in the old LDS designs, the priesthood and one of its most visible functions were clearly on display. Both the sacrament table and the presiding priesthood officers shared space prominently placed front and center. But in modern chapels, both the priesthood and the sacrament table, while still present, have consistently just moved out of the way. The once centrally located administration of the sacrament has been shifted to the side, to the point where nobody that I polled had ever been in a building where it was front and center, right? Always to the side. And it is now quite distant from the focus of either the congregation or the presiding authority. What takes the place of honor in today's LDS chapel? What's right in the middle? It's the pulpit, right? It's no longer the sacrament or the preparation or the priesthood in action. It is, well, the pulpit where they're reading conference talks, right? Have you ever thought of it that way? What do you guys think about that so far? Kind of interesting.
I went to a Presbyterian church a couple months ago, and there's their, bread and water section. Everybody has a different name for it again, but where the sacrament essentially is handled was right in the middle in front of people. And I will just note, in an LDS ward, the bishop or the presiding authority is who represents Christ. At least they're the ones with the stewardship or the mantle. It is a strange thing that in most wards, the sacrament table would be to that leader's left as he's up at the front. When we think of Christ being on the right hand of God, it is a strange thing. I sort of think Mormonism would have figured it out sooner, not had it on the left. Not that that really matters, and it maybe is just minutia, but I think most Christian denominations that do some form of the sacrament do that right in the front and center.
Yes, Jesus may be on the right hand of God, but this puts the bishop on the right hand of Jesus.
Exactly right. And this is a picture, I believe, from the Ephraim Tabernacle back in the early 1900s. When we talk about buildings where the altar's in the front, it was years ago. This quote from the article, a church's orientation communicates the importance the congregation places on different aspects of Christian worship. So the LDS Church is very different from other Christian churches. We talk about this all the time, the very specific things that are different. But recently, as we also talk about all the time, a lot of things are changing so that they're the same as other Christian churches. I mean, the cross, the hymns, I think I already went over this at the beginning. They are trying really hard to appear mainstream Christian. And as Bill pointed out, in most mainstream Christian churches, the altar is front and center. Do you think, would they dare? Let's find out. So I came across some remodeling plans for a couple meeting houses. I won't say where they are or where they came from, but this is very interesting to me. Again, these are not new buildings. These are remodels of existing meeting houses. If you look at the figure on the left, everything that's red there, you can recognize that as a chapel, typical chapel. The stand and all of that would be on the right-hand side of the figure. You can see the pews. And if you look at what I've highlighted in yellow, toward the lower right, that is the sacrament table. Now, everything here is red because it is going to be demolished on these plans. This is out of here. It's gone. And what's in its place? Bill, would you like to try to interpret the next two pictures on there? What does that say to you?
Yeah, it looks to me like where in the first photo or first image on the left, the sacrament table was where I normally would expect it to be on the right. And I remember that little up and over section behind it. That's all going to come out. And it looks like in the remodeled finished product of these chapels in the two right pictures, it looks like the sacrament table is going to be front and center with the priesthood sitting just behind it to the left and right center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you picture that? You're sitting there and you've got the table and then you've got your massive priesthood presence up there, right? No girls are passing this sacrament. All the boys are sitting there and all the bishopric is behind them. It's a massive priesthood presence, but it's also more mainstream Christian because you have your altar in the front. This is the drawing, the rendering included in these plans. Look at that. I have to say, if I walked into a meeting house, a chapel, and saw that, I would think, am I in an LDS chapel? Isn't that kind of shocking? It kind of shocked me when I saw that.
This is really very interesting, Rebecca, and it's a great find. I'm not sure that I've ever seen a better example of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to appeal to all these people that you're telling, come to a worship service, meet our pastor, meet our youth pastor, come to our Bible study. These are all words that are being said out there. You've got your altar front and center. Here is another set of plans. As you saw from the one before on the left, that's what exists. The other thing I noticed is they've taken it down to 2 rows of pews. This is your standard. You got the little ones, the short ones on the side. You'd always try to get your whole family in there. And you got the big one. And over here, again, sacrament table and the area where the priests sit. And then red because it's going to be demolished. And this looks like the new plan. These are 2 separate buildings, right? 2 separate remodels. So that's what I found really interesting. Let's go on here. Here's a view from the side where you can see the pews. And then you can see I've highlighted in yellow the altar, which would be right. I keep calling it altar. I mean, it is a sacrament table, but placing it front and center, it almost seems like it's an altar. And of course, we all know it's supposed to represent the altar in the temple, right? You've heard those comparisons. So I decided I would ask somebody, once I came across these plans, somebody who was involved in construction in the temple, has been involved in architecture. I wanted to see, what does this mean? What the heck? Is this a one-off? Is this strange? Is this weird? So here's my little conversation. I said, I have a question about LDS meeting houses. Perhaps is the sacrament table always to the side? I wanted to start with that question. The person who knows these things said yes. It is that way in all the standard plans of the past 25 years or more. So everybody that was answering my poll, they were absolutely right. In the last 25 years, it's always been over to the side, unless you're in a much, much, much older building. And I said, I've just been shown plans where the sacrament table is right under the pulpit. Does that seem new to you? The person says, yes, that would be innovative. I said, to me, it makes it seem more mainstream Christian, where they often have their communion altar right in front. And the person says, yes, it's rare in meeting house design, but this type of a symbolic gesture would show up. But at least in these two buildings, and who knows if this is the wave of the future. This is what's happening. I wanted to show you this design. Somebody on my Mormonish Facebook page, who's on the faithful side but likes to weigh in all the time, showed this plan, the Bountiful Standard Plan. Again, a much older building. This was created to save space. But if you look at that, it did have a sacrament table or altar in the front. But again, not your standard building, a much older building, like some of the others that we saw. So certainly doesn't look like the plans that we saw.
Is that building a square?
What?
The building there is a square?
Yes, it's like a diamond. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. So I will tell you, you'll laugh at this. When I saw the plans and I'm reading through all of them, something just jumped out at me. And for a minute, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have the biggest scoop in the world. This is what I thought. What do you think of that picture there on the top left as part of the architectural plans for a new meeting house? I was like, what? It's a cross.
It looks like blasphemy to me.
It's a full-on cross. I further examined it because I'm not going to jump to conclusions, right? And I believe that it's an example of the kind of lighting that they want to have. If you can see those little hang-down chandeliers. But even to include that example on a plan for a meeting house, I just, it just seems like something doesn't belong. So my thoughts here on this is I try to think, synthesize all this, because I think this is kind of a big deal. Why are they doing this? Why would they be remodeling? It's not a new building. They're gutting the old one and they're making the new one in this image where the priesthood sits up front and the altar's right in front. Maybe they want to look more like other Christian churches. We talked about that. More familiar, since everything else seems to be morphing to become more Christian. Maybe they want to focus more on the sacrament, right? On communion, instead of just somebody up there who's reading conference talks. Maybe they're trying to shift that focus to what it was before. Along those same lines, maybe they want to emphasize the priesthood and priesthood holders, right? We are the church that has the priesthood. Look at our priesthood sitting here. Watch us use our priesthood as we bless this sacrament, much like we talked about in the old Kirtland building. And then, little conspiracy brain here I have, how they've talked about 1 hour church, and they've already shortened the auxiliary meetings down to 25 minutes. And if they did have 1 hour church, all sacrament meeting would be is that sacrament. There would be some quick announcements. It would last 25 minutes. They would pass the sacrament, and then they would move on to classes and instruction and all of that. This setup to me seems perfectly designed for just that. The focus is absolutely in the front, just on the sacrament. And then you do that and you move on. So I don't know. Those were kind of the takeaways I thought from these plans, but I found it extremely interesting, and we'll have to see if more designs like that pop up. Thoughts on this, Bill, first, then RFM.
Well, my first thought is I think front and center works better if at the very least you get to have a better view if the 16-year-olds are using hand sanitizer before they break the bread.
Oh, gosh.
I gotta tell you, one of the grossest things about Mormonism is having teenage boys be in charge of touching the bread that all of us are going to place into our mouth. You, can I say you? The second thing I'll just note is that Mormonism, I think intentionally, Mormonism wants the focus to be on the authorities. Whoever presides in that meeting, standing front and center, who holds the authority for that ward or that meeting, that's where the church wants your focus to be. And Jesus is off to the side. And most of us who spent time in Mormonism, and for a lot of people who still are in, they recognize that Mormonism doesn't emphasize Jesus as much as they wished Mormonism emphasized Jesus. And I think that's intentional. And I think it's intentional that the sacrament table was always off to the side, because that's not where they really want your focus. They really want it on loyalty to the leaders of the church. This is a big move. It may seem like a small thing, but I think when you put the sacrament table in the middle, at least when I went to the Presbyterian church, there was a conscious thought of mine that Christ is the center, and this guy standing in the back who's officiating this stuff isn't as important as Christ, I do wonder if on a little small level, doing such might cause members to think more autonomously and recognize that whatever Jesus taught in the scriptures trumps what church leaders teach. Again, on a small level, not that it will be an overwhelming thing, but I think small shifts like this do change the way we think about the meetings that we're in.
No, that's brilliant. You said that so well, and I agree with you, because we've heard these statements, when you hear Jesus, think of the church. But the more I look on Faithful social media, people are like, you know what? I'm okay with Jesus, and Jesus is okay with me doing this slightly different thing than everyone else is doing. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm drinking some tea and I'm okay. Maybe I'm not wearing my garments every day and I'm okay. I've had, a conversation with Jesus. It's a double-edged sword. The more the church pushes Jesus to become mainstream Christian, people have their own relationship, right? And Jesus is awesome. He's in your corner. He's pretty much okay with most things that you do. He makes you feel happy. He validates you. He's not authoritarian. And so I think you're right. I think you're right, Bill. Seeing that kind of a ceremony, you might really start feeling a little autonomous in your relationship with the divine, and you don't have to go through who's that guy in the suit that's now going to read a conference talk. Small, but I think important. I think you're right, RFM.
I'm just wondering when they're going to put a cross piece on their steeples.
I'm telling you, when I saw that picture, and you saw the other plans, there is room there for a cross. It was a big open space behind. They already have on some temples kind of a little nub. It's a little kind of, part that goes out. It looks from a distance like a cross. The temples are already built in the shape of a cross. If you look down from above that nave structure, so anything's possible.
Well, I think that's one big hurdle. That's a big pill they're going to have to swallow in their never-ending quest to be accepted by their Christian brothers and sisters. They're going to have to put a cross up there. I'm not saying that's going to do the trick, but I don't think they're going to get there without that.
Yeah. I mean, look at that design right there. That almost looks like a cross, right? Little tiny. It just kind of looks a little, I don't know. I mean, they do have crosses on church property during Holy Week. They'll do those walk through Jesus's life and they'll put up crosses. So that does happen. Anyway, we'll watch it. We'll see what happens. If anybody else comes across anything architecturally interesting, it can be a little, window into sort of a shift or plans going forward. So let us know.
Well, in this instance, the church seems to be looking forward to making changes. In our next story, they are always resistant to making changes. Another update on the Fairview back and forth. Rebecca, what's going on there?
Yeah, and I'll do this briefly. But again, Fairview, they are just back in the news again saying, you know what, you don't have to do it. The legal stuff is over. But what about out of the goodness of your own heart? Lower that steeple. It's a win-win for everybody. Lose 20 feet of it, right? We've been going through all the letters. They recently wrote an opinion piece. Mayor John Hubbard wrote it with the assistance of some other people on the town council. And this one really hammers at our LUPA. And it really talks about, publicly in the paper, how the LDS Church uses this law that is supposed to protect people and their religious freedoms, protect maybe minority religions. Instead, they're using it to get what they want wherever they are and back it up with their billions of dollars. So I won't read the whole thing because we've talked about it a lot, but just know opinion pieces are out there in the Dallas Morning News where they're not pulling any punches. They're telling it like it is. They're literally calling the LDS Church a bully in what they are doing, and they're calling on towns to stand up, be aware, protect themselves. They are saying it out loud. There's a wonderful picture of Mayor John Hubbard. I always have to show this because remember how I talked about last week, he was asked to leave the Dallas Temple grounds. He had been told to go there by church leaders, go find out how wonderful it is. And somehow he was asked to leave the grounds by somebody who told him it was a gathering place for families and he needed to leave. And a lot of people on social media said, well, maybe he was not dressed appropriately and he had to leave. I just wanted to point out this is exactly what he was wearing. So you tell me if he was dressed appropriately to be on the Dallas Temple grounds. I just love to show that picture. He's awesome. Now, another thing that's going on in Fairview is they're actually launching a pressure campaign against the LDS Church over the steeple height. We're talking a website. We're talking signs. We're talking flyers. They are not kidding, right? They're really just saying, look, court of public opinion, you guys can do this. And, you should do this because our town is still hurting. The relations are still not great. This would not kill you to just lower it a little bit. I don't need to go into all the reasons. We talked about it over and over, but you can see here it's been picked up in a couple places and even more. So you haven't heard the end of Fairview. They are determined to launch this website and put up signs and just see if they can get the church to do something out of the goodness of their heart. I don't know. What do you think the chances are? I know.
Heart is first required before one can look for goodness there.
I stuck right into that one. You're right. A heart is first required. So anyway, that's up. What is up with Fairview?
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca. On other news, another story that's making the rounds, Rebecca, you're partly responsible for this, is the rumor that the church is shutting down all bishop storehouses, canneries, home storage centers, and food storage operations, and will instead direct members to the local community food banks. As recently as January 2026, the church updated and republished its home storage center locations, ordering information, food storage resources, indicating that the system remains active and operational. So the recently leaked messages saying otherwise is bewildering. The church's official websites continue to advertise home storage centers and food storage products for purchase. Yet this message on the right has been making the rounds. I got these original images from you, Rebecca. I know you put out a short on this whole thing happening, but this was dated June 4th, 2026, so just 4 days ago. Subject, all church home storage centers will close when all the food is sold. Alert, all church home storage centers will close when all the food is sold, all missions canceled. And I don't think, obviously, proselyting missions, but I think there you're talking about service missions.
Service missions at those places. And again, that was from some kind of ward specialist that sent it out. So none of this is authoritarian from the church, like you said, but couple different people reached out and said something is happening.
Yeah. The one there on the bottom right, church is shutting down all food storage supplies, canneries, and bishop storehouses. He went to the bishop storehouse and that's what they told him. He isn't a bishop, so he doesn't have any more info than that. They are selling everything at 50% off beginning June 15th. So if you love those Bishop Storehouse canned cherries and canned chili,
and beans,
50% off.
Dry
beans. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I might be there on the 15th. You know, I might try to get some discounted canned goods made at the fingertips of volunteers, and it might be exciting to do. So folks, maybe you'll beat me to it. Maybe I'll beat you to it. Put in the live chat, put in the comments there in the chat, either below the episode or if you're participating right now in the live show, put down which Bishop Storehouse product you'd like to get at 50% off. It might be interesting to see what you remember from your times serving at the storehouse or eating that food if your family was in a hard moment in life. So there's that. I just want to note, we don't know if it's true or not. This is the information on the right that we're getting. But as of right now, the church hasn't said anything. So I guess we'll play the old wait and see game.
Does anybody out there know anything about this?
Yeah.
And would you put it in the live chat or in the comments if you do?
And somebody else told me, I forgot to add this to what I sent you. They had been at a food bank and there was some information about maybe LDS families would be funneled more to the food bank than to using, the church's resources. And again, I don't know what each of these components are. There's the bishop storehouse. There's also some other, kind of facilities. So we may not know, but people that have called these different facilities, I think there's 6 so far that I've tracked that have said, that we're doing this. It may just be consolidation. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I hope it's not that, because this is super helpful to families. I mean, this is one thing I will say the church does. Of course you have to go in and have an interview and pledge your firstborn, but you can get, food help for a while for your family. So I don't know. We'll have to see. It was strange.
I think the problem is it takes volunteers, and I think the church is rapidly running out of people to staff different callings and missions and temples. I think this is another indication the church continues to shrink.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the workforce.
Wow. Did you guys ever go to any of those canneries? The weirdest thing I ever canned was something called, it was like meat fingers. It was kind of like a Vienna sausage kind of thing, some kind of weird rolled up processed meat stuffed in a can. Yeah, I can't even think about that.
I think that was just a workplace accident.
Well, there's that. I guess we'll see what happens. You've got a story for us on a BYU athlete, Rebecca.
Yeah, this was very late breaking, like 2 minutes. We'll just take 1 second on it right before the show. I have different people that I have younger people that pay attention to Instagram for me. They're like, hey, this is an update on Parker Kingston, right? We haven't heard much about, except for that his trial was put off into sometime in July. And RFM can probably weigh in more on this, but the headline is, motion asks the court to disqualify judge a former BYU player, Parker Kingston's criminal case. Again, he's accused allegedly of alleged CSA in Washington County, Southern Utah. He was a wide receiver, BYU. He was kicked off the team and has been going through this whole legal process. And it says the Washington County attorney filed a motion seeking to disqualify the 5th District Court Judge Jay Winward from the criminal case involving former BYU player Parker Kingston. The motion cites Utah Rule of Criminal Procedure 29, which according to the filing permits disqualification when a judge's impartiality might reasonably be questioned. And what they're saying is that the victim and all of her doctors and therapists have said she needs a lot more time. This has to be stretched out for her mental, physical health. She needs to take quite a bit of time. And it seems to them and the prosecutor that Parker and his team, legal team, are asking for concessions based around his sports schedule. I'm not sure what that means because he's not at BYU anymore, but they're saying the judge is kind of catering to him more than this victim. But I do have to bring up that the prosecutor, it took a year to file these charges. So what do you think, RFM? Again, just late breaking really quick, but apparently they're asking this judge needs to get out of here. He favors Parker too much. We need somebody that will understand that our client needs to take a whole lot of time before this goes to trial.
Typically, a judge who is too close to the case, who knows a witness or usually a defendant or a party in such a way that it could call into question their being unbiased, they're being objective, they're being able to be a judge in this case, will recuse themselves from it, which is where you don't have to bring a motion. They'll do it themselves. And that happens quite regularly. If a judge is not recused himself or herself, then it is unlikely that a motion to them saying they're too close to the case is going to avail much, unless it's bring something new to their attention. Maybe they didn't know that this certain person was going to be called as a witness. I don't know.
Yeah, it just
So
sounds
all
like
of
they're
that-
saying that he seems to not rule, whatever I'm trying to say, make more concessions for Parker than for them.
I'm trying to go from a legitimate basis for such a motion to an illegitimate basis, which is what this looks like. That's
Yeah.
where I was going. Because, I mean, a judge is going to rule the way a judge is going to rule. And just because they go one way more than another, yeah, that's always going to happen. A judge isn't stuck in a position where they have to say, okay, well, I ruled for them last time, so on this one I have to rule over here, and then back and forth. The judge makes the rulings the way the judge makes the rulings. If they don't like it, bringing this motion is going to do little more than piss the judge off. That's my take.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, late breaking. But again, the trial was not even supposed to start till the end of January. Somebody said maybe he's trying to move into the NFL. I know he was trying to get married. What about right to a speedy trial? Can't he say, no, we can't drag this out. I want to get this. I got to get this done.
Yes. And by the way, I speak from experience because I did bring such a motion once, and that was all it managed to do was piss off the judge.
Did you do that often, RFM? I feel like maybe you did.
Well, not intentionally. But speedy trial, yeah, he has a right to a speedy trial. And if he wants to enforce it, he can continue or waive his right to a speedy trial out until the judge says no more, no more continuances. Here you've got an unusual situation where apparently it's the alleged victim who's asking for these continuances. If he were to say, no, I want to have my right to a speedy trial enforced and I want to be brought to trial within those time limits, then it doesn't make any difference what she says. Of course, at that point, a prosecutor could dismiss the charge without prejudice and then refile it in a year. And then you'd have as much speedy trial as was left at the time that you dismissed it as the prosecutor.
All right. Well, thank you, RFM, for your comments there. Rebecca, thank you for the story. You've got one more for us, Rebecca.
Yeah, I have one more.
Something on Jasmine Rappley, it looks like.
Yeah, this is super exciting because I know we have so many creative people out there in our audience of viewers and listeners. You guys are just amazing. And I also see the content you guys put out. You guys are fantastic. This is an opportunity, a money-making opportunity. So an exciting opportunity for Book of Mormon enthusiasts. Jasmine announced it. She was absolutely thrilled. You can see right there, $10,000 is what we're talking about. Let's find out how any of you could make $10,000. This is amazing. So she works for the Ancient America Foundation, and they are holding a contest, right? A Book of Mormon movie trailer competition. You know what I'm talking about? In a world where, the exciting trailer that makes anything, even the worst movie, look amazing. And she describes it as a trailer that will make everybody want to read the Book of Mormon, right? Put everything. I couldn't make a trailer, but I did make this poster. I tried to put a lot of stuff in here. Anyway, she keeps saying this is not like a hack job. We want a cinematic, super slick, highly produced movie trailer of the Book of Mormon, right? The deadline is July 31st. So you guys have a month and a half to work on this. The first prize is literally $10,000. This is incredible. $10,000. It has to be between 30 seconds to 2 minutes and 58 seconds long. You can go to filmfreeway.com, movie trailer competition. But this is, I'm not making this up. This is absolutely real. You have the chance to win $10,000. And I did Jasmine a favor, and I put this all over social media because I thought a lot of people would be interested. These are some of my favorite ideas that people came up with. One said cinematic voice, like I just did, right? In a world, in a barn, in a hat, and within someone's imagination, a religion was born from a burning in the bosom to win over a young, impressionable girl by the name of Fanny Alger. I would read that book. Here's another one. Drone shot of an 1800s farmhouse far from above. Zoom in through the roof and the rafters. Young man sitting at a table, staring into a hat. Continue the zoom into the hat. See the rock. Keep going and find a scene with 400,000 men with bathrobes and steel scimitars all chasing each other through the Mexican jungle. These people you guys are so creative. Here's a good one. Why don't we include all the chopping that happens? Laban getting the head chopped off. Shiz getting his head chopped off. The one dude that chopped off all the arms. All the Nephites versus the layman. He can see it. You can see all of that, right? And then someone else said, not to mention Abinadi being burned at the stake, 1,000 oiled and tanned stripling warriors riding their tapirs into battle, plus a lot of incredibly buff men. Can you guys picture this? Do you have any ideas?
I don't know, but I'm getting strangely aroused.
Yeah. Whoa. What? Heating up the newscast.
I'll say to you folks out there, picture for a moment the 2,000 stripling warriors in cinematic fashion. Picture that without using an immense amount of absurd magic to make that occur.
Yeah. No, it's going to put all into perspective. But my very favorite idea for this movie trailer is this last slide, a blank screen. It would match the historical, archaeological, and genetic record. You just imagine the characters were true with your spiritual eyes. I think that one wins the internet. So we'll have to wait and see, because I'm sure they're going to present these. And if you guys, I'm not kidding, we post-Mormons, we are capable of doing this. We know the Book of Mormon maybe even better. We can do this. Wouldn't it be funny if somebody won from our side of the pond?
It would be. My initial reaction to this is, make your own damn trailer.
We're just trying to get excitement up around the Book of Mormon. Come on.
Who's judging this? Because my hunch is that this has to be a faithful Book of Mormon trailer, and that if somebody on our side of the aisle creates the most incredible, more historically accurate version, that it doesn't stand a chance in hell.
No, you're not going to want to read the Book of Mormon after that.
Oh, well, I think we could make a faithful one. I'm not kidding. Only it could be sort of so over the top that all of us would know it was sort of tongue in cheek, right? But it would probably appeal to a lot of people. So I don't know.
It's like the challenge is, we want you to make a trailer about this pile of dog poo so good that everyone will want to eat it.
In a bar.
All right. Well, there's that. So I think we've hit the end. I want to give you guys each a moment to talk about what you're doing. So let's start off with this.
Rebecca, please.
What do you think, RFM? You and I did 2 pop-up podcasts this weekend. No wonder I can't remember what I did this weekend. The first one was on Friday. Suddenly, RFM was able to get his hands on the suit that BAM, Bricks and Minifigs, is launching against Reckless Ben. So we decided to jump on, which we thought, oh, this will probably go 2.5 hours. We'll read through it. 4 hours and like 20 minutes later, but we went through the whole thing so that you guys can understand BAM's point of view. What are they accusing Reckless Ben of? What do you think, RFM? Any thoughts on this one? It was a great episode. It's already out. It's up on both of our channels. On 2 times speed, I think you could get through it in a couple hours.
Yeah, it was quite the ordeal, I got to tell you. But it was very revealing about what BAM is saying. I thought there were several soft places in in their complaint, which I identified going through, where it looks like they're not telling all the story. In some places, they're characterizing the facts so bad that it amounts to mischaracterizing the facts. And they say it's a death threat, and you look at it and you go, how's that a death threat?
Yeah.
Second one, maybe, but the first one, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's really good to know what they're alleging so that when we get the response from the defendants, who's not just Reckless Ben, but also a bunch of other people, they're going to be having to file responses, and they will look at those and see what they have to say, because I got a feeling they're not going to agree with what BAM is alleging.
No, and you poked a lot of holes in it. You really did. You made me see it, that just because you write it in kind of wiggly words, if you really think about it, you're not really saying anything. If that's the best you have, what don't you have? So yeah, it was very educational for me, although I had to use the bathroom almost for the last probably hour and a half. So if you see a weird look on my face on the video like this, that's what that was. And then RFM, talk about this one last night, like Sunday night. I'm telling you, 2 pop-up podcasts in one weekend.
I think I talked about this at the very beginning of the show,
you
which
did.
is why this show is and always has been a chiasmus, which is how you know that what we tell you is true and that we're ancient Hebrews.
That's it. And again, this is out on Mormonish and on Mormon Discussions. We just sit down with Summer Rain and Black Priesthood. It's only about an hour long, and we just discussed Kyle McKay because it was absolutely breaking news yesterday. It just happened like an hour previously, and we jumped on it. So as far as actual Mormonish, which is always Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, I am really excited about this episode. Come follow me, right? You guys know what that is. A faithful member reached out to me and said, I think there's something wrong with Come Follow Me. I think there's something wrong, and it's getting worse, and it's going to change a lot of things in the church. And I said, oh, I'm sure you would never come on my podcast to talk about it. And he said, of course I would. I've already turned it into my bishop and stake president. They never got back to me. So the title is there something wrong with Come Follow Me? And again, that's the church's highly correlated, highly curated curriculum. And what exactly is and isn't it doing for the members? And a faithful member weighs in. We're going to go through it. This guy's really super smart. He's a scriptorian. He does a lot of stats analysis. You are going to see the history of Come Follow Me, what they said it was going to be. It is not anymore that. It is morphing every single year, and we can see the trajectory. So that's 6 p.m. Tomorrow night, Tuesday night, Mountain Time. Also, I am starting a little series inspired by Bill. This is going to come out every Thursday. You've seen my very long form videos with Patrick Birch about the authorship of the Book of Mormon. I've had so many requests. People are like, slow down, slow down. There's a lot of there's a lot of information in those episodes.
Patrick Birch.
Really
I remember
long.
this fellow.
You remember this guy. These episodes are long. They're like almost 4 hours long. People are like, whoa, my head is spinning. He has amazing data. I'm like, you know what? Let's break this down. We'll just do a little hour here, hour there. It's going to be every Thursday. This is the intro. Who authored the Book of Mormon, episode 1? We're going to rely heavily on word print studies and some other things. It's going to be good and short.
Is the answer to that
really
question going to involve Sidney Rigdon by any chance?
Of course. We love Sidney Rigdon. We all do. And I think by the time you finish watching this, the people who've watched my long forms, they're like, yeah, Sidney, how come he's so overlooked in church history? How come he's kind of
Maybe because he didn't meet Joseph Smith until December of 1830 after the Book of Mormon was off the press.
That's not even necessary. Oh, no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a Spalding Rigdon theorist. That's not me. But this data is really, really interesting the way it's presented. So an hour long Thursday, I'll put that out. All right. That's all for me. Now moving on to you guys.
Yes.
All right. Let's see here. So this is also Thursday morning. This is the next in that logical deconstruction series. This was originally scheduled to come out a few weeks ago, but RFM and I on Mormonism Live did an episode showing the similarities between Moroni and the treasure guarding the treasure guardian narratives. I do want to say that this episode, these are made to be short. So this is like 6 or 8 minutes long. It'll go through essentially that data, but in a really quick format, something that folks could share with their believing friends and family if they're starting to ask questions, so that they can see really quickly how a bunch of things don't add up in ways that benefit the conclusion of the critic, and maybe help your loved one to start thinking about things a little deeper. So there's that. And then this is a little out of place, but do you have something coming out?
Did you skip something, Bill, on the way here?
Yeah, give me a second here.
I think you might have. It's just back a couple of slides or something.
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, here. Sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. I went to Thursday and somehow skipped over Wednesday. So Mormonism Live, RFM and I are sitting down with a woman by the name of Dawn. She is in the field of forensic criminology, and she does this day in and day out for her work, where she examines things in a way that is helpful to a criminal case, but it's different than the way the rest of us sort of tackle critical thinking, and it offers a whole nother facet of how to examine various sides in a debate or in a conversation. And so we'll look at some of the debates that Jacob Hansen has been in, the one I had with Robert Gurr, and also some recent stuff having to do with the church's lawsuit with Mormon Stories. And so she has some professional aspect reports written to go into these various things. And we'll have a conversation around that on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And so there's that. We've already talked about Thursday. So here we are to Friday and RFM.
Mormonism After Dark, baby. Friday night, 8:00 p.m. Mountain Time. Be there. That's where all the cool cats hang out after a long week to relax and deconstruct with family and friends. Welcome to the Post-Mormon Lounge.
And then what do you have coming out Saturday for us, RFM?
I have an idea, but not enough to articulate at this point, but I know it's going to be good.
Excellent. So Saturday, be ready for that. I think that does it. This is the end of the show that we've got. Folks, please do hit like and subscribe. We're glad you're here. Glad that we have a chance every Monday to bring you those things that are happening in Mormonism. And I got to say, it's been a ton of news the last few weeks, you two. Lots of big stories, and I got to imagine the next week's going to be the same. So, folks, we'll see you next Monday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, for our next episode of the Mormon Newscast. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.